been asked to talk a little bit about raising money with writing. And I guess the best place to start is to say that there isn't just one way of doing this. In fact, the first thing that was pitched out to me, I don't know if you guys saw the earliest schedule, it said grant proposal writing. And I said, wait a minute, I can't do grant proposal writing. I'm not a grant proposal writer. Because it's a different kind of writing than the kind of writing I typically do, which is direct mail writing. And it's just like the same difference between different kinds of poetry, right? Or between, say, journalism and poetry. Every kind of writing has its own specific style and its cadence and how it works. So what I'm going to talk to you about, and I thought I'd pitch out some example. We're going to go through a little thing here about direct mail writing, and I'll show some examples, and then I'm going to let you guys have loose on this yourself, and come up with some interesting examples. Okay, first thing you got to know, right? If you're doing this, okay, what makes? Why did I lose my? Try this again. For some reason it went to DVD. There you go. Here we go. Okay. So, what makes an effective solicitation? And the very first thing, oops, went back. Okay, start with your prospects. In other words, who are you asking money from? Right? Who are the people that you are going to be requesting money? And anybody take a marketing class yet? Right? What's this sound like? What do you think?
Your big ask.
Well, it might be, right, just who are you mailing to anyway? Okay. This is target marketing. Okay? That's what we're talking about. Who is your target? So, typically, donors who are doing mail solicitations are going to be less than $1,000 per year. Okay? And they're going to be people who have never given, who are in your database. Now, this is kind of taken from another, a little bigger program I do that we kind of get into what is your database and all this. But your database can be your computer program, right? It could be an Excel spreadsheet. It could be something like GiftWorks or Donor Perfect or Razor's Edge. These are a little more sophisticated programs, which actually don't cost a whole lot of money, as it turns out, particularly things like GiftWorks. It could be a card file that is on your desk that you're going through, and these are all the names of the people you're writing to. Okay, this is your database, and typically the people who are going to get letters aren't going to be the people who you are asking for bigger dollars from, but the people who are getting $25, $50, $100 a year. Now, by the way, why all the fuss over all these people who give all these little dollars? Why should we care? What's the big deal here? Yeah.
I mean, maybe not as affected by the economic changes, so that they give more regularly and more reliable.
Well, they're certainly reliable. That comes out, and maybe that amount of money you're asking for isn't quite so much that it makes that much difference to them. These people are typically giving out of their paychecks, not their savings accounts. But what else? Why else is this important? Yeah.
Individual donors give more than anyone else.
Ah, very good. You've been reading something called Giving USA. It turns out that that's true. Individual donors do give more than anybody else. And in fact, there's another caveat here too, which kind of goes along with that. Individual donors give 70% of the money in the country, right? Organizational donors give 30%. And how about dead people? What about them? They actually give around 13%. But turns out the sum of the dead people is more than the sum of the corporations. Okay, why do I bring this up? Because the people who are giving you $10, $25, $50, $100 a year, every year for 20 years, turn out to be the people who leave you in their will. And so it's important we reach out and develop a relationship with these people. Okay, so people who give less than $1,000, people who are non-donors. Okay. And these people who are new to us, right, that are just totally coming in from other sources, which are acquisition mailings. We'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. Okay, segmentation. So you get these names, right, and you say, how do you tell? You're going to send one letter to everybody? You might, okay. But you're much more effective if you tailor things a little bit to where people are, either themselves personally or how they relate to your organization. That's called segmentation. And you know things about folks. What's the number one thing you might know about a list of people you have? What do you think? You got to mail to them, right? So what do you know? You know their address, okay. That's a good thing, right? And so you have an idea of, maybe if you're, I understand somebody here works with libraries, and if she knows that somebody lives in Radnor Township and somebody lives in Upper Marion Township, are they going to send them the same letter? No, because they have two different libraries, right? So it's important to be able to say, to meet the needs of the people in what you're writing to them. How does that relate to them specifically? Okay, so let's look here a little more. Oops. Okay, the things that are most used in fundraising is something called LIBUNT, right, which stands for last year but not this. Okay. SIBUNT, some year but not this. I will tell you, if you use these phrases in front of a fundraiser, they'll think you're in the Klan. Okay. Oh, well, the LIBUNTs did, right, or the SIBUNTs did. Okay. Little inside fundraiser jargon for you. Okay. Those are the things that, and then of course the amount of gift is used, right? People say, oh, well, if they gave $100, we're going to send them this letter, or we're not going to send them a letter, we're going to call them, or whatever it is. Okay. Other things to consider, how old are they? What their sex is, their interests, geography, ethnicity, lots of things, okay? Any number of these you can segment, and pull out. We're going to send all the women a different thing than all the men. We're going to send to all the people we talked about geography, whatever it is. Okay? You can tailor what you're writing to meet that need. Okay, profile your donor. What you're doing is building a profile. What is your typical donor look like? Now, for those of us who have worked in the world of church planting, you may have read, in fact, I think some of you may have read Purpose-Driven Life, right? What was Rick Warren's book before that? He ripped off his own title. Pardon me? Purpose-Driven Church. And if you knew Purpose-Driven Church, you would remember Saddleback Sam. Okay? Anybody ever see the book? Right? Okay. It's kind of interesting. This is target marketing. Okay? He figured out who is the Saddleback Sam and Sally, I think, or something like this. Right? Who are the people who would be most likely to come to our church? Who is it in our region that we might attract? And so they dressed the guy up. And they said, okay, well, he prefers casual and informal over formal, I'll say, whatever that says there. Okay. He overextended in both time and money, right? Something pointing to his wallet, right? Rather be in a large group than a small one. Okay? They found out all these things about the person they were working with, and the same thing about the folks that you want to look at before you even put down letter number 1 on the paper. What does the person who I am writing to look like? Literally. Have an image in your mind. What does this person, what do they want? What do they need? Yes, please.
know, were they doing a survey? Because I know you can like get census data and know that in this zip code, this is the average income, price of home, whatever.
Yeah.
But something as particular or specific as like a large home versus a small, you know, like.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how they found this out.
Yeah.
They had a level of sophistication that a lot of folks wouldn't necessarily have.
Like, were they actually asking people that?
I think they did some door-to-door things, and they kind of talked to folks about what people prefer one way or another. I imagine they talked to other congregations area. I'm really not sure.
But was this a more small cell group church versus?
No, this is like a serious thing.
No, I know, but a question like that, does that say I want to blend in versus I want to be in the street where they get to know me?
Yeah, well, it could be. But the point of this exercise, not so much, to identify Saddleback Sam, right? But to say that you have to come up with an image of what is important to you in terms of who your donor is, whether based on what you already have or based on what you aspire to, right? I think this is a great visual for that. Here we go. Okay, so real quick, split testing, control versus variable, which is simply to say that back to high school science, right? You have something you're going to be consistent with and something you're going to change. You're going to work that through. So we know that most of our people are women, but we're going to change and have and male to men. How does that differ? Or we're going to put out an orange envelope, and usually we put out a white envelope. How does the orange envelope work? Right? So type of message, amount of ask, type of envelope. You can always change things and vary. Somebody says, well, what is, how will we know if we're improving? Well, you change and you say the amount of ask. Half the people we asked for 25, half we asked for 50. The 50s really did well. We're going to ask everybody for $50. Now we put a real stamp on it, and some of them got the little nonprofit indicia. The real stamp did well. Now the next letter is going to be $50 of the real stamp. And it's going to move down the line. Okay, so once you know why you're mailing, who you're mailing to, and how, and we covered a couple of those. Then what do you say? And it varies by segment. Okay. Now here's where I want to get into the language of things. If someone doesn't know you, you need to say more to give them context. Okay. A lot of folks will say, well, actually, do you have that letter? Right here. Yeah. Thank you. This is a thank you letter that was written. Okay. Very interesting kind of example. It's a single page here, right? And it starts out, thank you for supporting. Okay. Thank you letter and a solicitation letter aren't very different. And what we're saying here is, if I was going to ask Megan for $1,000 and she didn't know me, could I do it all on one page? Megan? This is deja vu. Do you have $1,000 to give to the Friends of the Warner Library?
I don't know you, so no.
Right. Okay. She doesn't know me. She's not going to do this because who are they? What are they about? How? What's the context here? What would I have to do to convince her to do that? Maybe I say, Megan, could you give me $1,000? Because I'll tell you why. Because kids really these students we have really get a lot out of the library. In fact, let me tell you about Susie. Susie really loves being at Eastern, but wasn't sure about her academics. And she came to the library and was helped by John, the research librarian. And John was really helpful in pointing her to some resources that she didn't know about before. And she understood after, not only did John show her the library books, but to journals and to video. And Susie really loves video. That's how she learns. She's a visual learner. And that was the key to opening up biology for Susie. Okay? Now, And by the way, could you, and I want you not to help me, and I don't want you to help the Warner Library. I want you to help Susie. Could you have that $1,000? Do you think you could help us out with that?
Sure.
Yeah, right. Okay, so you see, you're so well scripted, thank you. But you see the difference there, right? You had to explain it to her. Could I say all that in a page? Probably not. Not as well as I could if I had a little bit more room. So, point is that fundraising letters like this, particularly to people you don't know, don't have to be 1 page long. Big myth out there, well, nobody's going to read more than one. Well, it turns out they do, because you engage them. You work with them to tell a story about Susie, who gets something out of the library. Something I talk about in my classes is, here we go, is what I call, over here, sorry about the camera there, here's my donor, okay, here is the solicitor, here's the organization, here's the mission. Okay. Nobody, you guys are great people, I love you, and you're all worthwhile, and Melvina. What would I used to say? Anybody? Nobody cares about you, the solicitor. Thank you. She took the class. That's right. Okay. And that's so right. And how about this organization here? Right. The Warner Library is a great place, and everybody knows that they should support it, right? But you know what? Nobody cares about the organization either. The donor cares about the mission. They care about whether Susie is getting what she needs out of the money that the donor is giving. Whether it's a library, whether it's food, whether it's trees in a forest, whatever it is, they care about the mission. So you got to talk about the mission. Now, when can I use a single page or something a little small?
Once they actually donated the funds.
Yeah, once they know you, right?
Yeah, once we have a relationship, then you're asking again.
Exactly. So if I were to ask Megan now, okay, now I'm, you know me, you gave $1,000 before, can you give another $1,000?
Sure.
Sure, because she, it's okay, I'll pay you later. Because she knows us already, okay? And I don't have to say so much to somebody when I know them. I don't have to write so much, okay? So, the idea here is that you want to build a relationship with people. You want to build a relationship so that they understand what it is that you're doing, and they connect with the mission. Anybody here know Dave Thomas? Who's Dave Thomas? Wendy's, right? You know what? Dave Thomas has been dead like 5 years, all right? But he formed a relationship with his customers that even after he's gone, people still identify with him and Wendy's hamburgers. Okay? Ed McMahon? I know a few people here know Ed McMahon.
Tonight Show, Johnny Carson.
Johnny Carson sideshow, or sidekick. Johnny Carson show sidekick. What else was Ed McMahon known for? Publishers Clearinghouse, right? That, my wife's grandmother was convinced that Ed was going to show up at the door, and we all got magazines to prove it. Right. But the point was that Ed McMahon developed a relationship through the mail with hundreds of thousands of people who were anticipating him coming to their door. Okay? So you can form a relationship through the mail if you tell the story about what you're doing. Okay. I am way off track here, I'm sure, but let's move on. Okay, talk about acquisition letters. Right? Think of how you speak to people, right? Like we said, if somebody already knows you, you can say less to make a point. Previous donor letters. Think of how you write. If you write on paper, then you can write more. Right. If you are doing this kind of work on paper, okay, you can write more and longer. Now, you'll see what this means when we get to the next point. But you want to, well, let's just move ahead here, right? If you write an email, they tend to be less. Okay? So if it's a paper document, you tend, by the way, what is, people will tell you, oh, well, you know, really, fundraising by paper mail is going out. True or not? No. Turns out more money is raised even today by paper mail than by email. Email is a very small blip, which, by the way, if you look, what's the life cycle of a piece of paper? It's long, maybe like 30 days, right? Going across here. What's the life cycle of an email? Blip, blip. Right? It is in your box and gone. This piece of paper might sit on your desk for a month or two, or maybe you put it in a folder, right? And you bring it back later on in the year when you have time or money to address it, okay? Email, never gonna see it again. Okay. So, like I said, build relationships. Mail and paper, right, are things that go to one person. And I use what I call the 1-to-1-4-1 methodology. Make sure this is not loaded. Okay, 1-to-1. What do I mean by that? 1-to-1, me to you, right? I am writing to Wanda about a particular topic. That's important. I'm not writing, it's not all of us at Eastern University writing to all of her in her family. It is 1-to-1 for one other person, right? For Megan. It's Matt writing to Wanda saying, can you help Megan? Or Susie, or whoever it is. Right? That's what makes actually this and a lot of fundraising more effective. It actually takes it out of the realm of begging. You're not asking for yourself. You're not asking for anybody else. You're not asking for somebody who doesn't deserve it. You're asking for the person where you're telling a story about. Okay, like Susan. Okay, interesting. When you're building relationships, do you say, "Hey, you girl there," right? No, you use their name. Okay. Not to whom it may concern, not dear friend, right? Right? You're using their name. You're saying, dear David. Dear David, can you help Susie? Whatever it is, okay? It sounds strange, and even though David knows that, they really don't know my name that well, and that's just printing it in, folks respond to that much more, because it looks like you're building a relationship. Okay? One and only one signatory. That means a person who's signing it, right, per letter. It's not the president and the board chair and all of us at Eastern University. One person, because it's a correspondence and it's 1-to-1. It's not all of us and all of you. Okay? And the same letter for all, or same person for all letters. This is why the Ed McMahon thing was so powerful. Is because it wasn't Ed one week and the president of Publishers Clearinghouse the next. It was Ed and Ed and Ed and Ed, all the way through, until he became the person that they were expecting something from, to show up at their door. Okay, the voice, really important, right? Colloquial or informal, right? Saying, what is that conversational tone versus formal? Now, you find that when people write to you in a formal tone, how do you feel about that? Do you feel like you know them?
No.
No, you don't feel like you know them. You don't feel like it's somebody who you can relate to, right? Particularly these days. They worked years ago in a different era where culture had different expectations. But these days, people expect you to say, Dear Danny, not Dear Daniel or Dear Mr. Bismarck. In fact, he probably knows when somebody calls him up on the phone or sends him a letter, Dear Mr. Bismarck, you're in trouble. There's something going on there, right? Or somebody wants something from you. So make it informal. Okay. Get their attention. Grab their attention up front. This is very important to do when you're raising money on the letter. Grab their attention up front. Think of the person, remember, back to segmentation. Who are you writing to? Have that image in your mind, Saddleback Sam or whoever it is, right? And grab their attention. Scouting saved my life. That's important, right? Or Susie would not have a bachelor's degree without the help of John the librarian. Okay. What is it that gets their attention and says, yeah, this is important to me? It's kind of like our previous folks earlier today were saying, it's almost a journalistic thing, tell them almost what it's about up front. Well, tell them, grab their attention there so that they stay with you into the letter. Keep their attention throughout. And by the way, I'm not talking about hyperbole here, and I'm not talking about saying things aren't true. There's enough excitement in life and with the people that nonprofits serve that you don't have to make up stuff. Now, as I was telling Megan earlier today, I am all for changing the names to protect the innocent. Okay? I think it's important to have some form of anonymity if it's appropriate in terms of dealing with children or just folks that don't want their name used or whatever. But you want to tell their story, and that's okay. So I think there's, you don't have to, you have to be able to go back and point and say, yeah, I know who that is, and that works. But whether that person's name is John or Tom or Bill doesn't make any difference. Because there's reasons behind me not having that. Especially if you're dealing in areas like rehabilitation or some relief agencies or whatever, however that works. But keep their attention throughout. Tell a story about how this organization that you're representing has an impact on that person your mission recipient. More story, less stats. A lot of organizations are all about telling you, we serve 1,000 kids, and those 1,000 kids get 3 meals every day. So every day we serve 3,000 meals, and and those kids they're show a 20% weight increase when we come in, every year for all the years we've measured. And stats are huge and they're important, and it makes a difference. But when given the choice between reading a story and reading statistics, people respond to stories. They want to know how the dollar they're giving is impacting somebody who they care about, that mission recipient we talked about. Okay. So while you're doing massive good work, they want to know what the story is for the one person who is actually benefiting from their service. Okay. You can back it up with statistics, but you got to have a story. And like I said before, nobody cares about you, they care about your mission. So it isn't about our deadline is June 30, so send us money to meet our deadline. Nobody cares about your deadline. Nobody cares about your budget, but you can put things in. For example, if you were an organization that gave backpacks to kids who were going to school, right? And you had a June 30 fiscal year deadline, well, that's fine. You say, the money we get by June 30 will allow us to, over the summer, to buy materials so that by September 1st, those kids have backpacks for school. That's a mission-related deadline. And it points, again, to the mission and to the kids you're helping, not to the organization, and say, oh, woe is us, you have to help us, and we're in a crisis. So what is it about your cycles in the life of your organization that lend itself to things that you can point to that are mission-related deadlines? Okay, so what's the number one issue about direct mail? This is an ask letter. Ask. People don't ask for money. It's terrible. In fact, you don't just ask once, you ask a lot, okay? So you ask multiple times in one letter because people need, they need reinforcement, even a few lines down. I'll show you some examples. Okay, the Johnson box, show you an example of this. Here's your letter, okay? Johnson box is a small little thing up top here, just a few lines that might say, help Susie get her college degree. Something like that, that a little tag there above the text of the letter that kind of gives a little enticement to read. It turns out that it boosts response because people, it gets them into the letter better. It's almost like a title there. Grabbing opener, we talked about that. Tell your story, we talked about that. And stats, but only stats to tell the story. Okay. Ask, and I'll show you some examples of that.
Can you move back a slide?
Oh, sure. I don't, actually, that is the thing, can I? There you go. I actually can. Yeah, grabbing opener, tell your story, and use stats, but only to reinforce your story. May I move forward?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Talk about asking, right? 3 times, and then ask again. P.S. When was the last time anybody wrote a P.S. on a letter? Okay, when's the last time you wrote a letter? Okay. When's the last time you wrote a P.S. on a letter? Okay. Turns out, what's the first thing somebody does when they open up a solicitation letter?
Trash.
Yeah, it gets beyond the trash, thank you. What else? You want to look and see who wrote it. Who's sending me this letter? They go to the bottom, and under the signature is an ask that tells them what the letter's all about. P.S. Go to www.Warner Library to renew today or send your gift with the enclosed card. Okay. People read these things. Yes?
Question. We have a former employee who went to work for an organization in Miami.
Right.
All of a sudden, I started getting solicitation mail from this organization from Toni Morrison. And I'm like, one, how did you get my home address
Sure.
from an employee who wouldn't have known it?
Well, we could talk about the ethics of all that.
Right. But just all of that made me want to throw that in the trash.
Well, that's fine, but that's a particular situation.
Yeah.
I mean,
But
it's
but I
not.
was still like, how, like, is that even, like, what is that called when,
Well, in particular, that would be called probably unethical because they took your name from someplace.
right, but even,
if-
celebrity names.
but some
or whatever.
organizations are they might rent lists other places. They might actually may not have been. It may have been that they just chose your zip code area, knowing that your zip code was good, and they bought a list of these names and used those.
From Miami.
Well, I mean, it's plausible.
Yeah.
I'll get into it real quickly here, but you can rent lists that parse things down pretty closely for your segmentation for acquisition letters. And we'll just put the best face on this and suggest that that's what they did. Okay. Bold, underline, and italics. Important to grab the eye with things that are important to you. And I'll show you some examples of that. And by the way, fonts based on media type. Serif font, all these little curly cues on the end here, right? Actually, much more readable on paper. Sans serif, much more readable electronically. So this is Times New Roman, and this is Arial, I think. Okay? But because people read 25% slower on a computer screen than they do on a piece of paper. So you want to pitch to them the kind of typeface that assists them. So use the serifs for the paper, the sans serifs for the electronic. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do we're going to actually skip this part here. And let's roll to this. Take that out. And let's look at a couple letters here. Here we go. Here's an Encore letter. Okay. Here's the Johnson box up here I was telling you about. Okay. Disease and famine, poverty and fear, faith questioned at every turn. Sound familiar? It did to Jesus and in his world, and it's ours today. Okay? That's an opening line that grabs you, pulls you into the letter. And let's just roll up a little bit. How's that? Can you see that? Okay. All right.
Can you turn off the light?
Oh, sure. How's that? All right. So, at the United Methodist Committee on Relief, Encore, let's see, where were we? Oh, Jesus was on the ground with the people, his people. And then say, that's what we do at Encore. Now, this particular piece was for a program they called One Great Hour of Sharing, which is not specific to a particular disaster or anything. It was like their general appeal for what they do broadly. So we shouldn't be surprised when the Apostle John reports how Jesus' disciples came upon a man who was blind at birth. And John and his friends asked, who sinned that this man is blind? Was it him, his parents? Jesus was quick to respond, not his fault, okay, in bold. They get the idea that the people that Encore is serving, it's not their fault that they're in the situation they're in, right? He's here so people can see what God can do, right? Now, it's what I tell them every day. I being the fella, or excuse me, who signed this one? Cynthia here, who is the signatory. Up here, right? And then an ask. I'm in bold, separated out. Now you notice how also, look at the spacing here. How much space there is between these sections. This isn't a thick, have to dig into it kind of letter. This is what I call light. Even though it's a two-page letter, it's something that you can scan down quickly and get if you wanted to by following the bolds and the underlines. Or you can get into the story if you read it. Okay? So, underline important point here, all the funds collected in the One Great Hour of Sharing go to cover Encore administrative expenses. We want people to know that and get that, so you put it in underline and you italicize it. Okay? And 100% of all, this exists, 100% of all of the Encore donations go to those who we help. Okay? Again, important point needed to be emphasized there. Okay? And so it plays itself out here, right? You can see again another ask, and then at the end, you can open this up, there's another ask, make your gift today. Right? And then another place where you know where to send the money. Okay? It's not just one ask, it's several asks. It takes a story, breaks it up, and at key points, you kind of pause them. And you say, gee, this is important enough for you to give to. And then you start going again, then you pause them again. You know, wasn't this important enough for you to give to? And keep on rolling. Let's take another. Let's do, oh, you know what? No. Before we do that, I think this is the one. Yes, okay. Lutheran Theological Seminary. Okay. Again, the Johnson box. Laura was called by God and sent thanks to you. This is a seminary. Okay. Grabs them into the letter. And then you see here, I love it here. First thing, right? I love the East Coast, the faculty, the student community. This one was from Minnesota, I think. Actually, we'll say it in the letter. Okay. Now here, not quite so many underlines, but here's an ask here in the middle. Can you show your thanks for Laura and her fellow students with a gift today? And then another ask just down the way here, so if you get nothing else, you're starting to catch those. In the season of giving thanks, we can all be thankful for the dedication of Laura and her fellow students. Join me in supporting them now. But it tells her story. Right? She doesn't get any help from her synod and her home church. She gets a couple merit scholarships and some federal work study, and she's grateful, but she has a big gap there. So you're saying, you know, she needs the money. We need scholarship money for students like her. Now, notice in either of these, no hyperbole, right? We're telling somebody's story here. And it's a real story. You don't have to make stuff up for anybody. All you got to do is just lay out what the situation is. Okay. Tells you she's a middle child from working class St. Paul. She took jobs, oh that's right, she was taking summer jobs in New York City and loved it and wanted to come to the East Coast and wanted to get into urban ministry. That was where she felt called. And that's why she picked coming to Lutheran Seminary here in Philadelphia. And then we talk about, students at LTSP come here to answer a call, right? So we quote her directly. What is she saying about what is going on there? Okay? And then at the end, here again, here's your PS, another ask, here's another ask here. Okay? So you see how this is going? This is a me to you, and it's telling a story about somebody else and asking almost on their behalf. 1 to 1 for 1. Take a look at one other here. Let's see. I don't remember which one this is. This is another encore letter. Actually, let's take a look at Farouk. It's a little different. This is dear friend. Now you have to say, you know, you go with what your client wants, and they want you dear friend. But it tells about the student center being built and funded, and how they're looking for more money to keep on funding the student center, right? And so we're saying 80% of those of the students get financial aid, right? And this is not a little less than we're talking about a broader audience. We didn't pick out a particular person, but we're still telling the story of the mission recipients. Again, the ask in the middle here, are you dedicated to students who can change their world with the click of a mouse? Can you send your gift today? So again, the author is asking on behalf of somebody else. And here now, we ask for a specific amount, I think. Is that right? Yeah, $30, right? And by the way, that's really important. Ask for specific amounts. Don't ask for whatever you can send us. Don't ask for just send us money. Ask for a specific amount of money. Because people want to know what is being expected of them. Can you send $30? Can you send $100? And you know, with our technology today, it's easy to find out what they gave last time and throw that in here, or that a little bit more. Or if it's an acquisition, you know, no donor before, throw a number in there. People want to know what is it you want from them. And they respond to that much better than just giving anything again. And again here, you can see another ask, and another ask in the PS. Okay, so why don't we take a few minutes, and you guys can just give this a shot, see what you think. You might have fun with it. It's a different kind of writing, but it's something that remarkably, I think it's Billy, right? Millie? Oh, sorry. Was saying earlier today, it's a lot of organizations are just coming to this, even though there have been people who have been doing this for a long time. In other words, and there are a lot of reasons for that, but the style is something that is always new to a lot of organizations. And if you can master the skill, particularly in a nonprofit environment, it's not only helping them, but it's people will value your contribution to things. So that's what we got. sit down and give a shot for one of these letters. Pick your favorite charity, whatever you want to write about. Remember the grabbing kind of opening. I tend to write Johnson boxes and all that at the end because I want to know what the letter's about before then I go back and draw them into the letter. So I say at the end, I mean, that's the last thing I write. It's almost like for some people, they write the title of their paper after they've written the paper because they are not 100% sure what the paper is going to be about until they write it. Yeah, they have some idea. All right. So, ready, set, write.